second best backcourt in the league. We'll give you that. Uh, you know, like I say every time, man, they've got five starters that could score double figures. That's what you need. That's a lot like the championship Pistons team, except two people that can score 30 a night. And one of them is probably the second best passer in the league, maybe the third. Bogdanovich coming off of the bench seems to produce quite a bit almost every game. Good three-point shooter. Brandon Jennings, again, coming off the bench, didn't do much in the last game. This is a good team. I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs. And honestly, I think in a situation where if it was, however it pans out, the 4-5 or the 2-3 or whatever it be, that them against Toronto, I think that they beat Toronto. Slightly better defensive team. Maybe not now with the addition of Ibaka, but actually, they're really not a better defensive team. Yeah, Toronto probably is a slightly better defensive team at this point. Still, definitely a better scoring team. Toronto couldn't. Serge Ibaka has been, kind of missing since he got brought on, and that's kind of where they need him right now. With no Lowry on the court, they don't have a second scorer. So I don't know. I would be afraid to play Washington if I was anybody. Moving on to the number 7 team in the league, the Los Angeles Clippers. Dropping 2 spots from last week. I had them at number 5 last week, coming in at number 7 this week. Basically just because of some of these losses. That home loss to the Bucks was a big loss, especially after you had Chris Paul back and was looking like a fucking stud 2 games ago. They're just so up and down. They lose 2 straight games, I believe. Chris Paul scores 6 points against Utah and then comes back against, Comes back against the Clippers and they lose, or the Bucks, excuse me, and they lose by 1 at home. Damn, that's just... I would have had them up at number 5. If they just would have won those games, that's ridiculous. Those are really ridiculous games. And you didn't even have to beat the Jazz. You just had to look better. Like, they didn't look very good against the Jazz either. And it was just kind of disheartening. Let's see what happened. How many did he have again? It's not like Antetokounmpo even went off. Giannis only had 16 against him. And then Chris Paul again, 6 fucking points, man. So, coming off when he had like 28 or whatever the other night, and everybody was talking about, including myself, was talking about how it looked like when he was trying to score, they were a much more effective team. And then it kind of just regresses back into this. 6 points in back-to-back games. That's difficult for me. They still have, obviously, the talent around them, you know what I mean? The JJ, they got DeAndre Jordan, who put up 22 against Greg Monroe. That was a good matchup. Blake Griffin, of course, best player on the team. So, they're still who they are. But a little bit of worry from me for the Clippers. All right, and moving on to the number 16 in the league. The Boston Celtics stay in the same place that they were last week. Again, they pretty much are who they are. They keep winning. They beat Cleveland the other day. Let's look them up here. Or beat Cleveland at home. That's obviously no slouching of performance. They beat Minnesota at home as well. Minnesota was hot, playing very well. Beat them by 13, put up 117 against them. Minnesota had just beaten Washington, I think, 1 or 2 days before that. Let's see. And they smashed Chicago at home. Won 10 of their last 11 at home. Isaiah Thomas is a motherfucking monster. Tonight they play, let's see, who do they play tonight? Where is it? They play at the Nets. Isaiah's not going to be in the game. He's not playing. He has a bone bruise in his knee, I think. So he is out. We'll see who the Celtics are other than him. That's kind of my big question. I don't know who they are other than Isaiah Thomas. I think that Isaiah Thomas might be my candidate for MVP. I think all the people that are hating on him, it's just not, they're not looking at the big picture of what's going on statistically, impact on the team, everything like that. I think that he is rated 4 or 5 or 6 in different people. That's pretty crazy. I especially like Kawhi. I think you take Kawhi off the Spurs, they're a better team than if you take, and they are a better team already, but there's less impact than if you take Isaiah Thomas off of the Celtics. I mean, that team becomes something totally different. But that actually happens, and tonight we're going to find out who that team is. Without Lil Isaiah, we'll see who they are against a Nets team that they should beat anyway. But, well, let's watch it happen. All righty, here we move on to the number 5 seed in the league, the Utah Jazz. The Jazz moving up 5 spots from last week. I had them number 10 last week. This week I have it number 5. Looking fucking exceptional. I mean, truly, this team is studs. They lost. They are studs. They lost by 8 last night at Cleveland with the return of Kevin Love. A difficult place to play. I mean, there's really no two ways to put this. They weren't favored in the game. They actually played very well. I think that's actually a win-win for both of those teams. Utah's 43-26. If you look at their record, they're legit. I mean, they're definitely a legit team. The night before that, they went into Detroit and beat them by 14. So the second night of a back-to-back on the road at Cleveland, with Kevin Love return, they only lose by 8 in a game that was probably closer than that even. Before that, they held Chris Paul to 6 points in a game where the Clippers were, the Clippers were favored, not by Vegas, but by ESPN and all of them. They didn't think George Hill was going to be able to stop them. Clippers were Jazz win by 6. Spread the lead between them and the Clips. Team's no joke. Plays great defensively, great team ball just in general. Good passing team, good shooting team. Another one of those teams you do not want to see in the playoffs. A lot like Washington Wizards. This team a little better, I think, than Washington though. Gordon Hayward's a stud, most underrated player in the league, and he's definitely the most underrated player in the league. But yeah, Utah Jazz, watch the fuck out. I think that they are, the 4th best team in the West. I think that's probably where everybody else has them too, so it's not that weird. But yeah, moving on to the number 4 team in the league, the San Antonio Spurs. Same place I had them last week. Don't really think anything has changed. I'm glad LaMarcus Aldridge is back. I'm glad he's healthy. I mean, that's always good. I never like to see people get hurt. They are what they are. They're the best coach team in the NBA. They're not as explosive and not necessarily the same team that they have been in past. I think it's gonna be harder for them to score. Kawhi, it's difficult a lot of times, or sometimes for him to make plays off the dribble and things like that. Becoming a very good shooter, very good passing team. They're more like a better version of the Wizards or probably just a better version of the Jazz. That's actually kind of how I see them. Plus Kawhi, the best defensive player in the league is Kawhi Leonard, so that's obviously a big plus. Dedmon is playing well. I just don't see. I need to see more scoring. Kawhi can do it, but I need to see somebody else who can put up 20 a game every game before I could put them into the top 2 or 3. And if so, I mean, I've always been a Spurs fan. If you ever listen to me the last couple of years talk, I thought that the Spurs were the best team in the league like the last couple of years. So I have a number 4 right now. I need to see more scoring out of LaMarcus, or some more scoring out of a Patty Mills, or somebody like the 3 or something like that, or a shooting guard or something. Anyway, moving on to the number 3 team in the NBA, the Houston Rockets. Again, same position that I had them last week. And I mean, I kind of already broke it down earlier on the show. I love. This team is deep. I mean, this team is ridiculously deep. They got the best Lakers player, and which isn't like, it's not fucking great. It's not great. He's damn good, though. Put up 30 the other night, had 7 threes in their most recent game. Lou Williams coming off the bench with Eric Gordon coming off the bench. There's nobody that has 2 scorers like that coming off the bench. Nobody in the entire league has 2 scorers coming off the bench like that. We already talked a lot about him earlier in the show, so I'm not really going to break it down too much more. But just, and now with the physical, the amount of minutes, and then the elevated gameplay from Nene, teams not to be fucked with. Worst matchup for any team in the NBA. Worst matchup for any team in the NBA. And then so we all know who the number 2 and the number 1 are, but we all got to wait now. you got to wonder which order I had them in. And if you heard what I said earlier about who I thought was going to be favored to win the championship, you should probably figure this one out. But to the number 2 team in the league, we go. The Golden State Warriors. Dropping 1 spot from last week. I had them number 1 last week. Just losing these games. Cleveland has been losing games as well, but Cleveland doesn't look as broken as Golden State looks. Golden State looks like they've been kind of figured out, like they're a shell of the team that they were before. Crushed Orlando last night. Super, super surprising. Not really. Klay Thompson put up 21 in the first quarter. Klay Thompson's the man. Love Klay. Let's see, what are their other games recently? Golden State. Yeah, see, they had to come back. They were down by 16 in the third quarter against Philadelphia at home in a game where they were a 17.5-point favorite, and I actually put money on Philadelphia and won. They come back to win by 2 fucking points. That's what I'm saying. At home, you win by 2 points against Philadelphia after being down by 16 in the late third quarter, the end of the third quarter. Just, to me, that's ridiculous. Especially considering Philadelphia had to go all the way to the West. It's not even like a Cleveland where it's like a 2-hour flight or a 1-hour flight or whatever the fuck it is. They're all the way on the West Coast. And let's look for some more Warriors games here. Yeah, and then that bullshit on was it Saturday? Yeah, Saturday when they played the Spurs, and then they didn't start any of their players. They didn't play Iguodala. They didn't play Draymond, Klay, or Steph Curry. They got beat by 22. They fucking deserve that shit. They fucking deserve getting beat by 22. And that is why they dropped, man. Like that's just some dumb shit. That's truly some dumb shit. And I understand people got to rest and all this, wah. Dude, the game before that, 2 games before that, they lose by 1 point at Minnesota. You know what I'm saying? 102 to 103. So they've lost 3 of their last 4. I don't know. They're just they're worrying me a little bit without Kevin Durant, and I don't know who Kevin Durant's going to be when he returns. So I have him at the number 2 seed, and I almost dropped him to the number 3 seed. I almost put Houston at number 2. That's no joke, and I'm sure that after listening to my tirade about everybody that I just said, I'm sure that you believe me that I if I'm Golden State, I don't want to play Houston. The only reason they're number 2 is because Kevin Durant's coming back. If they don't have Kevin Durant, they're not as good as the Rockets, I don't think. And moving on to the number 1 team in the league, we all know who it is. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers. +1. They are up from the number 2 spot last week to the number 1 spot this week. You know, they've been struggling as well, but basically, I kind of just outlined how I felt about the top 2 teams, and if you understand that I almost dropped Golden State to 3, this really wasn't a very difficult pick here. Last night they got a really good win against the Utah Jazz, a better win than Golden State has had in at least a week, 2 weeks. Fantastic W right there, 91-83. That the Utah Jazz underrated, definitely. Before that, let's see, they smash Detroit 2 days before that. Shoot 60% from the floor at home. Beat Detroit by 32. Again, that's what I'm talking about. Those are big wins. These big wins are what you're going to need. Boy, you look like a good fucking team. At Houston, they lose by 5. Harden goes off. With no Kevin Love and stuff like that, though not a bad, like I just said, that's not bad. You lose by 5 with no Kevin Love at Houston, you're probably in pretty good shape. And let's see, before that, do we have any games? Beating Orlando on the road with an Elfrid Payton triple-double. Difficult to do there. So they're actually a little bit on an upswing after sort of a difficult March so far. I have Cleveland Cavaliers as the number 1 seed and probably the favorite to win the championship. I would say I'd give them like a -110. I'd give Golden State like a plus, like a just a even, like a -100. And then other teams, other numbers, pretty high numbers, I guess, for other teams. Houston, I'd have like a 300. But anyway, that'll do. That'll come to the end here of the top 10 power rankings in the NBA. We're going to finish you off with some underrated shit, something I haven't done in a while, but I need to kind of pick my ass up off the bench and get shit moving a little bit. My underrated shit for the week is Isaiah Thomas for MVP. We see all these... everybody wants to talk about statistical comparison basically between LeBron and Kawhi. That's a big one. LeBron versus Kawhi, who has a better odds for MVP. Of course, Kevin Durant's in the situation. Of course, he's been dropped a little bit now. And then